This episode is presented to you in the form of an audiobook. Introduction. To Kill a Mockingbird, written by Harper Lee, is a coming-of-age story that takes place in the made-up town of Maycomb, Alabama, during the Great Depression. The tale is told from the viewpoint of Jean Louise Scout Finch, mixing the innocence of childhood with a growing awareness of morality. It uses a child's eyes to reveal the deep injustices present in the American South. Although the main plot revolves around the trial of Tom Robinson, a black man wrongfully accused of raping a white woman, the story's deeper message focuses on how prejudice is learned, accepted, and confronted in a community. At the centre of the story is Scout's dad, Atticus Finch, a lawyer who represents moral strength, compassion, and quiet bravery. Atticus sees justice not as something to show off, but as a personal duty, to do what is right even when the outcome seems obvious. Through his actions, Scout and her brother Jem gradually learn about the complicated nature of people, discovering that good and bad can exist in the same individuals. Maycomb acts as a small-scale society. Its strict class system, racial divisions, and unspoken rules dictate how people act and how justice is served. Families like the Cunninghams, Ewells, and Finches show how poverty, pride, and privilege affect moral decisions. These social divides are not just background information. They play a significant role in shaping the legal system, education, and everyday life in the town. The book also looks at childhood as a place for moral development. Scout starts off with a simple view of right and wrong, influenced by rules and punishments. As the story progresses, especially through school experiences, neighborhood disputes, and courtroom events, she realizes that what is moral doesn't always match the law or what society thinks is right. This conflict between legality and morality is the ethical core of the novel. In the end, To Kill a Mockingbird is more than just a story about racial unfairness. It's about understanding how other people feel. It says that empathy isn't something we just know. We have to learn it, practice it, and stand up for it. Harper Lee shows us that real bravery isn't about being strong or in charge, but about being ready to support kindness and justice, even when things get tough or don't go our way. Key idea number 1. Moral education begins with empathy. One of the main ideas in the novel is that empathy is key to moral growth. Atticus Finch teaches Scout and Jem that to understand others, you have to see life from their point of view. His most famous lesson: you never really understand a person until you climb into his skin and walk around in it, becomes the way the kids view the world. Scout's early experiences show how easily misunderstanding can lead to judgment. At school, she has problems with teachers who don't see her background, and she first reacts with anger towards classmates like Walter Cunningham and Boris Ewell. These situations highlight how social systems often lack empathy, focusing more on strict rules than on human feelings. Atticus steps in not by blaming others, but by helping Scout think about their struggles, poverty, and upbringing. This lesson goes beyond childhood fights to bigger moral issues. The town's fear and myths about Boo Radley show how ignorance can lead to cruelty. Boo is seen as a monster, not because of what he does, but because he is different and not seen. As Scout grows up, she realizes that Boo is not a danger, but a fragile person affected by the isolation and fear that others have placed on him. Empathy changes him from a figure of fear into one of quiet kindness. Atticus himself shows empathy even to those who disagree with him. He defends Tom Robinson with respect and dignity, even though he knows the jury is biased. He also avoids hating Bob Ewell, understanding that hatred often comes from ignorance and shame. This doesn't excuse bad behaviour, but it changes the way we see justice as a moral duty instead of a personal grudge. Through these examples, the novel suggests that empathy is not just feeling sorry for someone, it's an active moral skill. Without it, laws can become tools of oppression, and communities can justify cruelty as tradition. With empathy, people can challenge injustice, even when they are alone. Key idea. Number 2, justice and the law are not the same thing. A key point in To Kill a Mockingbird is that the legal system doesn't always bring about justice, especially in a biased society. Through Tom Robinson's trial, Harper Lee shows how laws can be followed correctly on the surface, but fail to deliver true justice. The courtroom acts like a stage where the truth exists, evidence is clear, and logic is sound. Yet the final decision is unfair because the jurors are influenced by racial prejudice instead of facts. Atticus Finch understands this difference better than anyone else in Maycomb. He realizes from the beginning that defending a black man accused of attacking a white woman puts him at a big disadvantage. Still, he insists on presenting the truth clearly and respectfully, believing that the law should aim for fairness. His defense breaks down the prosecution's arguments step by step, pointing out inconsistencies in the testimonies and showing that Tom Robinson physically couldn't have committed the crime. Logically, the case should end with an acquittal. However, the jury's guilty verdict proves that justice isn't determined by evidence alone, but by the beliefs and fears of those interpreting it. The law reflects the moral condition of the society that enforces it. In Maycomb, racial hierarchy is more important than truth. A white person's word is taken over a black person's, no matter how logical it is. Harper Lee makes it clear that the injustice here isn't just a mistake, it is built into the system. This realization hits Jem hard, who strongly believes in fairness and rules. Unlike Scout, who is still figuring out how the world works, Jem is crushed by the verdict because it destroys his trust in the institutions that are supposed to protect the innocent. His emotional reaction shows a loss of childhood innocence, marking a change from thinking the law is always good to realizing that it is influenced and often tainted by human bias. Atticus's calm reaction to the verdict shows the moral message of the novel. He doesn't get angry at the jury, and he doesn't give up on his beliefs. Instead, he sees the trial as something important for his conscience, not just a win. His bravery is in doing what's right, without hoping for a reward, teaching his kids that being moral is about trying hard and being honest, not just about winning. The book highlights the difference between law and justice, suggesting that it's up to individuals to take on ethical responsibilities, not just organizations. Laws can be unfair, traditions can be wrong, and the majority can be wrong too. Real justice needs people who are ready to question social norms, even if it means being alone, facing mockery, or failing. Key idea number 3. Innocence is lost. When society teaches prejudice, another important idea in To Kill a Mockingbird is that prejudice is something we learn, not something we are born with. Growing up often means losing our innocent view of the world as we face harsh realities. Harper Lee uses Scout and Jem to show how kids start off with a natural sense of fairness, but this sense gets changed and hurt by the views of adults around them. At the start of the story, Scout sees people as individuals, judging them based on her own experiences instead of labels society gives them. Her early problems at school and in her neighbourhood come from confusion, not from being mean. She doesn't get why some families are looked down on, why some kids don't have to follow the rules, or why adults act in strange ways. This confusion reveals an important truth. Prejudice doesn't make sense. It's something we learn from what we see and hear. Jem's growth makes this idea even clearer. Unlike Scout, who tells the story with some distance, Jem feels the unfairness as it happens. He believes in fairness, rules, and that adults are right, so he expects a fair outcome in Tom Robinson's trial. When the verdict goes against all the evidence, Jem is deeply upset. This moment shows a loss of innocence, not because Jem finds out that bad things exist, but because he realizes that society often protects those bad things. In Maycomb, the adult world supports prejudice by staying silent and accepting it. Racist words, unfair treatment, and double standards are seen as normal, making injustice seem like a regular part of life instead of something shocking. Kids pick up on these signals unless someone teaches them differently. Atticus is different because he breaks this cycle, encouraging his children to question what they see instead of just accepting it. Boo Radley's character shows this idea from another perspective. He isn't feared for anything he has actually done, but because of the stories people tell about him. At first, the kids believe these tales, but as they grow up, they start to see things for themselves instead of just hearing rumours. When Scout finally sees Boo's gentle humanity, she realises how easily fear can take the place of understanding when people are judged without really knowing them. Through these similar experiences, Harper Lee suggests that losing innocence doesn't come from gaining knowledge, but from facing unchecked prejudice. Being morally mature doesn't mean just accepting unfairness as something that has to happen. It means seeing it and deciding not to act in the same way. Scout's development gives us hope. Even though society teaches us to be biased, individuals can also learn to be empathetic, patient, and brave in their morals. Key idea number 4. True courage is moral, not physical. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee changes the way we think about courage, showing it as moral strength instead of just being physically brave. Through characters like Atticus Finch and some others who seem less important, the story questions the usual belief that courage means being strong, aggressive, or in control. Instead, it shows that true courage is about doing what is right, even when you are scared, face opposition, or know you might lose. Atticus is the best example of this idea. He takes on Tom Robinson's case, knowing it will bring anger, social rejection, and danger to his family. He also realizes he probably won't win. Still, Atticus moves forward because his conscience tells him to. He tells Scout that real courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through no matter what. This changes the idea of courage from just winning to having integrity. This lesson is also shown through Mrs. Dubose, who at first seems mean and bitter. Atticus makes Jem read to her every day as a punishment, but later he reveals that she was fighting a serious morphine addiction and wanted to die free from it. Her fight changes how we see her anger as pain and her determination as a quiet kind of heroism. The kids learn from her that courage can be something private, painful, and often misunderstood. The difference between Atticus and the town's more aggressive men makes the theme clearer. Bob Yule's threats and loud behaviour seem strong at first, but they actually come from insecurity and cruelty, not real bravery. Harper Lee shows that trying to scare others and being violent are signs of moral weakness, not true strength. Even the kids start to understand this lesson. Jem's anger and frustration slowly turn into thoughtfulness, while Scout learns to hold back, deciding not to respond to insults with fighting, even when she's pushed. These moments display moral bravery on a smaller level, self-control, patience, and understanding when facing unfairness. By changing the way we think about courage, the book suggests that making ethical progress isn't about big heroic wins, but about regular people who keep doing what's right, even if no one notices. True courage, according to Lee, is quiet, lonely, and often goes unrecognized, but it's the only thing strong enough to stand up against injustice. Final summary. To Kill a Mockingbird is a story about growing up that looks at how people learn to deal with a world filled with unfairness, fear, and bias. Through the experiences of Scout and Jem Finch, the book shows how their childhood innocence is tested as they face harsh social truths, making them realize the difference between what is right and what people accept. The strict social structure of Maycomb shows just how deeply unfairness can be part of daily life. Atticus Finch is the moral heart of the story, showing that true justice relies on personal beliefs instead of what others think. His defense of Tom Robinson shows that the law can fail when society is influenced by prejudice, but even in loss, moral duty stays strong. The book redefines bravery as quiet determination and highlights empathy as a crucial moral quality. In the end, Harper Lee suggests that while prejudice is learned, so is kindness. Moral development happens when we learn to see others as real people instead of just labels. By doing this, To Kill a Mockingbird gives us a lasting lesson that true ethical behaviour starts with understanding, and that it is everyone's responsibility to protect the innocent, just like the mockingbird.